for the most part, I'd say about 80 to 90% of the people that I've worked with who have brain fog, I've actually been able to help pretty substantially. And it wasn't like I therapized them. What we actually found is that by targeting all of these different dimensions, it can be actually, you can sort of figure out a good plan to sort of improve your brain fog. So a couple of other things. So another medical disclaimer that this is something that what I'm going to share with y'all now is stuff that I have found useful in my clinical practice. I myself used some of these interventions. So I had pretty bad COVID about a year ago and was also noticing some amount of brain fog. So I kind of went through my own brain fog regimen, and I found that I basically am completely recovered from that. But remember that this is not medical advice, and that each and every one of you should really talk to a doctor about all of these things and sort of try to figure out a customized plan. But here are a couple of things that work. The first is yoga or Tai Chi. And specifically, I found Shirshasana to be very effective. So Shirshasana is a headstand pose. So it's this particular asana where you're upside down, right? So it's a yoga posture where you're upside down. It's definitely something that requires some degree of training, so I wouldn't try that at home. You really need a good teacher to teach you how to do it. But Shirshasana is literally like you're just doing a headstand, right? So your head is at the bottom and your feet are at the top. And the cool thing about Shirshasana is that it really trains your body to maintain blood pressure to your brain. So it really wreaks havoc on your cerebrovascular system and your vascular system, not in a negative way, but it sort of trains you to be upside down. And as you're upside down, it trains your body a little bit to handle blood flow a little bit better. So Shirshasana or any kind of yoga or Tai Chi, I think will probably be effective. There's also good evidence that yoga and Tai Chi have anti-inflammatory and stress-reducing effects. So I'd recommend yoga or Tai Chi. Specifically, probably slightly more recommend yoga over Tai Chi. And that too, some of the yoga postures that you should do are ones that have postural changes. So bending down and touching your toes, doing the hand above your head, maybe doing something like downward dog or parvatasana or things like that. But yoga is actually really good at having your body move in particular ways that require you to maintain blood pressure. So yoga or Tai Chi is number one. Second thing that we have to consider is obesity. So this is where some amount of exercise is actually really important, but we're going to tunnel down into what kind of exercise. So it's not just reducing obesity for its own sake, although we do know that adipocytes are pro-inflammatory, right? So we talked a little bit about that. But specifically, the kind of exercise that we want to do is going to be cardiovascular in nature and ideally has you using your legs. And why is that? So there are a couple of really important things to understand about sedentary lifestyle and the impact of sedentary lifestyle on specifically our leg muscles. Our heart is here, okay? And our heart pumps things. And generally speaking, our blood tends to pool at the bottom of our feet, right? Because of the effect of gravity. So there's one really interesting thing. If you look at your body, what you'll sort of find is that even if you look at the back of your hand, okay? It's kind of out of focus. But if you look at the back of your hand, you can see veins, right? Even if you look at your head or your neck, you can see veins. So veins tend to be pretty peripheral when it comes to the top half of your body. But if you look at your legs, it can be very hard to see your veins. And the reason for that is because a lot of times our major veins in the legs are actually on the inside of the leg. And we actually rely on our skeletal muscle, the muscles in our legs, to pump blood back to the heart. So anytime I walk, the contraction of the skeletal muscle, anytime I take a step, is actually helping blood come back to the heart. So one of the things that I found is that with a sedentary lifestyle, we're walking less. As we're walking less, we're getting more blood kind of pooling in our lower extremities. So we're seeing increases in stuff like varicose veins and stuff like that. And all of that is associated with a sedentary lifestyle. So any kind of exercise specifically that involves walking and a high level of cardiovascular workout is actually really good. So this is one of the situations where, I wouldn't recommend specifically bench pressing. So bench pressing will increase your cardiovascular weight, but getting gigantic muscles on your arms is not actually, or your chest, is not actually what we're really shooting for here. What we really want to do is engage that skeletal muscle in our legs and ideally start to exercise and get to a decent heart rate, right? So essentially cardiovascular activity using the legs is what we want to target. So that'll also have the added effect of hopefully reducing our obesity and a couple of other things. The next thing that we want to do is really think a little bit about our diet. So remember that there's actually studies that show that, let me just show you all a quick paper. So brain fog, inflammation, and obesity, key aspects of neuropsychiatric disorders improved by luteolin. So we know that some of these flavonoid compounds, specifically something called luteolin, which I think is extracted from usually olives, and this is potentially another reason why the Mediterranean diet has like positive anti-inflammatory effects is because of the prevalence of olive oil. So you may have luteolin in the Mediterranean diet at a high level as well. So people can also supplement with luteolin, but this is definitely something that I would encourage you to talk to your doctors about, because luteolin can be biologically active with other compounds like medications and things like that. But we sort of know that supplementing with flavonoids and luteolin can actually have a positive effect on brain fog. So the other simple way to kind of think about this, though, is that if you eat nutrient-dense greens, that'll also do the trick. So it's not just healthy diet in general. It's sort of thinking a little bit about, okay, what are the dietary inputs that I need to kind of compensate for the brain fog? And the specific thing about luteolin and flavonoids is that they seem to have very positive effects on the parts of our brain that appear to be affected by brain fog. So remember this mast cell activation, this high level of inflammation. There's very strong anti-inflammatory, antioxidation, and neuroprotective effects of flavonoids and luteolin. So that's something that I would definitely recommend that y'all talk to your doctor about. The last thing to generally consider is to remember like two super basic things. The first is sleep and caffeine. So sleep is incredibly important. So just about every person that I've worked with brain fog has needed to have some kind of improvement in their sleep. So if you're not sleeping properly, sleep is just the general time that our brain uses to heal itself, right? So if we're like not sleeping properly, or our sleep is disturbed, or we have too many substances on board, if we use marijuana to help us sleep, if we use alcohol to help us sleep, even if we take exogenous melatonin, I'm sometimes a little bit concerned about the high level of exogenous melatonin use, even though from a medical standpoint, it's very, very safe. But I think good sleep is huge for brain fog. The last thing to consider is, once again, hydration. So this is where you just got to be drinking lots and lots and lots of fluid. So if we're talking about this blood pressure effect, we got to remember that like fluid intake is very, very important for maintaining a healthy blood pressure. So you've got to really look at what's your liquid intake over the day. Are you drinking lots of soda? Are you drinking lots of caffeine? Are you drinking enough water? How often are you urinating? What is the color of your urine? You generally want to be urinating like a light yellow color. If your urine is completely clear, your fluid intake may actually be too high. If your urine is very concentrated, or you're not urinating very frequently, there's a decent chance that you're not drinking enough. So these are the last kind of two things to consider. So